Welcome back to Underground Strategy. It's a pleasure today to be with Kostya, a friend of the podcast and a personal friend. Welcome, Kostya. How are things in Ukraine at the moment?
Tony, thank you for having me back. Your podcast raises crucial issues at a time when the world is facing serious challenges. And the threats today go far beyond Ukraine, I think, and they affect stability, democracy, and Europe's security. The fact that you highlight these issues is incredibly important. I truly appreciate your work. And when we talk about Ukraine, I think that we want to talk about Russia too. Russia attacks continue daily. Just yesterday in Kyiv, air raid sirens started around 10 p.m. and lasted deep into the night. Through the night of March 16, Russia launched 90 attack drones, 47 of which were intercepted by our air defense. And strikes came from multiple directions: Millerovo, Bryansk, Shatalovo, Primor-Sakhtirsk, and Chauda. As a result, Chernihiv, Kyiv, Kharkiv, and Odessa regions were hit. There are casualties and injuries. Russia continues its systematic terror against civilians, and we fight every day, not only for our freedom, but for the security of all of Europe.
Thanks for that, Kostya. And I really am hopeful that you and your family are safe as much as possible, all the people in Kiev and Ukraine. And we know that you and everyone are doing your best to win this war and to end this war as soon as possible. I want to link back to your book, which also touches on delivering services in times of war. How has that been going since the last time we spoke, Kostya?
Well, thank you for this question. Since our last conversation, management in times of war has continued to grow. Thanks to Amazon, the books has now been read in more than 20 countries. It has reached audience not only in Ukraine, but also in United States, Canada, United Kingdom, France, Denmark, Germany, Australia, Japan, India, United Arab Emirates, and other countries where people are keen to understand how leadership works under extreme pressure. We have received feedback from business leaders, government officials, and military personnel who are applying its insights in their work. 3 print runs have been released, and the English edition has helped bring Ukraine's crisis management experience to really wide global audience. Another major milestone, as I think, it's about Swedish publishing house has acquired the rights to publish the Swedish edition on the book. This would not have been happen if Max Locker, our friend, hadn't taken on the translation, and 10 dedicated proofreaders hadn't joined us, and yes, Per Lager, lecturer at the Swedish Defense University, senior advisor and author of Upskill and Reskill, whom we met in Kyiv, hadn't agreed to write the foreword for a Swedish edition of the book. Per Lager is one of the leading experts in the Nordic and on leadership, competitive analysis, and innovation learning. I recently finished recording the Ukrainian language audiobook, and I'm also considering the best approach for English language audiobook too. Additionally, my Ukrainian agent and publisher Roman Kozyuk and I remain open to proposals for publishing the book in other countries and languages. And right now I'm working on the next book, Leadership in Times of War. This is one focuses on the 3rd year of the war and goes deeper into how leadership functions under constant stress, limited resources, and uncertainty. It's not just a book about war, it's about the decisions that help people endure and grow, even in the most challenging circumstances. As with the first book, to ensure a broad discussion on the topic, I invite outstanding top executives from various industries as contributors to share their life hacks, wisdoms, experience, and reflections. Of course, veterans of the war among them as well.
Thanks so much for that, Kostya. And we look forward to working on leadership in times of war with you, reading it, and as you know, having you back on this podcast in the future when that's out. But you mentioned the work that you've done and management in times of war, the lessons been taken from there and the resilience. And what are some of the key lessons that you have taken away from your time in the ministry and also leading on the home front in times of war?
Oh, now I have a time to make some reflections. Then it's easier to talk, because when you work around the clock, you really don't even remember what you do yesterday. And now, yes, I think that we can talk about some most important lessons. And first, for me, I think decisions must be simple, fast, and effective. In a crisis, there is no time for lengthy approvals or excessive bureaucracy. The focus must be on what delivers the greatest impact here and now. Complex solutions often collapse under pressure, so simplicity and speed are not compromises. They are necessities, really. And but that's not enough. People need to be inspired, I think. They must see the value in the project and task they are working on. When people understand that their efforts make a real impact, they give their best. And the war has proven that a motivation team can achieve the impossible, even under the toughest condition. Second, it's just about management. It's not just about management in crisis, but also thinking ahead. War has taught me to look beyond the immediate challenge, not just to solve problems, but to build resilient systems that will function in the long run. This applies to digital transformation, social protection, and economic policy. Ukraine cannot afford to think only in terms of survival. We must focus on growth and development even in the hardest moment, I think. And last but not least, human capital is the most valuable resource. Without preserving and rebuilding it, there will be no resistance, no victory, and no reconstruction. No technology, strategy, or reform matters if there are no people to implement them. The greatest challenge today is not just to win the war, but to retain and support those who will shape Ukraine's future. That's why investments in education, rehabilitation, and support for veterans and professionals in critical fields is not just a post-war issue. It's a priority for us right now.
Kosti, I should have maybe mentioned before you gave that very comprehensive answer that you have now left the ministry and you've done a tremendous service to the people of Ukraine. I know from the bits of times that we've collaborated, just the good work that you've done in delivering services. As you've mentioned, they're under tremendous pressure, and that can only be commended. But now with your skills and your vast experience, what's next in terms of your career?
Thank you, Tony, for your kind words. I really appreciate it. After completing my work in government, I now have the opportunity to consult and engage in high-impact projects where my expertise in crisis management, digital transformation, and strategic leadership can bring the greatest value. My key areas of focus are technology, finance, and logistics, industries that they are essential for Ukraine's recovery and Ukrainian strength. I'm also working on Leadership in Times of War, a book that builds on management in times of war and takes a deeper look at decision-making, team formation, and resilience in most challenging conditions. Additionally, I now have the opportunity to consult organizations navigating complex environments, deliver keynote speeches, and lecture on transformational leadership at the Alfred Nobel International Business School in Dnipro. But right now, the most important thing is the next big challenge, because I'm engaged in key meetings and interviews that will shape my next step. It will undoubtedly be tied to Ukraine's international integration, strengthening its resilience and driving its recovery. It's important for me. And this is not about searching the opportunities, it's about choosing the path with the greatest impact for me and for my country.
Your next steps really do sound interesting. And if we go back to just to where we are now, and it's a difficult time perhaps in terms of geopolitics, How important is the economic and logistical element to winning the war, and then still to provide services to the people in Ukraine? And can regular people do perhaps something in a small way to continue supporting those needing help?
Economy and logistics, really everything. Without them, you can't fight, you can't function. War is not about weapons, it's about resources, production, energy, taxes, salaries, logistics. How do you fight if you can't fuel a tank, if there is no one to build drones, if there is no communication? It's all part of really bigger system. Right now, businesses in Ukraine are operating even under attacks. Production is relocation, entrepreneurs adapting. It's tough, but without it, the country wouldn't survive. Logistics is whole other battlefield. They hit our ports, our energy grid, yet exports continue, humanitarian aid reaches frontline cities, and the military is supplied. That's the result of massive efforts from both big companies and ordinary people and international partners and government. It's a really big joint work. And you ask me, what can people outside Ukraine do? First of all, don't stay silent, I think. This isn't just Ukraine's war. It's about the entire free world. If you support Ukraine, make it known. Second, push your government and local leaders. Politicians make decisions when they see public demand. Write letters, join rallies, vote for leaders who stand with Ukraine. Fight Russian propaganda. If you see misinformation, counter it. Don't let them control the narrative. It's really important. Buy Ukrainian. Product, clothing, technology. Ukrainian businesses are operating, exporting and growing. Every purchase supports jobs, pays taxes, and strengthens the country. Another thing, visit Ukraine. See firsthand how the country functions in wartime and share what you learn with people back home. In another great idea, invite Ukrainians into your podcast like you, Tony. Seriously, this conversation really matters. They let people hear Ukraine's story, our story, directly without any filters.
No, I think that's an important point. And, you mentioned also leadership in times of war and underground strategy. Max and I are contributing a chapter. You've gently mentioned it and two kids at school getting to the homework, waiting for the night before, to do the homework. So we will do it. That's a promise that we're making on air. And we will be supporting that and having you back with other authors too. And you mentioned leadership in times of war deals with the third year of the war. You were mentioning the importance of logistics and the economy in war. And all of this thought around war and the destruction that comes with it, it ties in with something you mentioned earlier, that human element, which is really maybe the most important. And could you maybe tell us a little bit about how you and your team supported those veterans? And this is something, of course, that's close to our hearts at Underground Strategy.
This is an important topic, and I'm glad you're asking about it. War changed people, and it's our responsibility to ensure that veterans receive the support they need and have opportunities for normal life after the front lines. So what have we been doing? First, it's about digital solution, because it's my job. We build systems that allow veterans to access essential support, financial aid, rehabilitation, education, without bureaucracy. Someone returning from there shouldn't have to spend months dealing with paperwork just to receive the assistance they are entitled to. Second, free prosthetic. We ensure the high-tech and sport prosthetic could be provided online, without long waiting times or excessive red tape. This is crucial for wounded soldiers undergoing rehabilitation in Ukraine and abroad. The system is designed so that every veteran can get the best possible solution for their case. Third, access to mental health services. Psychological support should be as accessible as medical care. We worked to ensure the veterans could receive help online and offline in every Ukrainian gramadas, Ukrainian municipality, without facing bureaucracy or stigma. And beyond that, other ministries have launched important initiatives too. Ministry of Veteran Affairs, Ministry of Economy, and others have introduced programs such as funding for veteran sports, employment support, and grant for starting their own business. These initiatives are vital because they don't just help veterans survive after war. They help them live full lives and contribute to rebuild the country in our society.
Quick pulse check. Are we on target? Drop a review on your app and hit subscribe on YouTube. Every click helps to keep the momentum going. Let's move ahead.
Thanks for that. And we sending a shout out to all the veterans out there, especially the ones injured and in Ukraine. We know it's a hard time that they might be having, and thank you for all that you've done, Kostya and your team. I'm now going to move on a little bit to ties in with the same topic of veterans. But in times of war, really everyone becomes a soldier or some form of auxiliary. And have you personally trained in military skills since the start of the full-scale invasion? And just tied to that, how has the war changed your perception of personal preparedness and resilience?
Yes, it's important. Since the full-scale invasion, I've trained in firearms handling, tactical medicine, and drone piloting. In Ukraine today, this is not a choice. It's a really necessity. Tactical medicine. I train, and so did my family. My wife, my 12-year-old son, and my 9-year-old daughter at the same time. This wasn't just an important skill anymore, it became essential. My kids didn't fully grasp the seriousness of the situation, but they knew how to stop bleeding and what to do during shelling. In 2023, my son and I took it a step further, a complete drone operator courses together. Warfare has evolved and drones are no longer just a hobby today. They are really essential battlefield tool. Today, knowing how to fly a drone in this difficult circumstance in the air is useful both in the military and after war in civilian life too, I think. How has my perception of resilience changed? Before, I thought resilience was endurance. Now I see it's about adaptability. In a crisis, the strongest person isn't the one who can endure the longest. It's the one who can adapt the fastest, accept reality, and take action. And the biggest lesson, it's about real resilience isn't just about individual skills. It's about your environment and your team, your people around you. If you are surrounded by people who know what to do, your chances of surviving and winning increase really dramatically.
And building on that, you mentioned small arms training. And firstly, before I go on, it's really significant that even children have to be exposed to the type of medical training that you've mentioned, combat medic training. And it makes sense given the volatility of the situation in Ukraine, given the full-scale invasion.
You know, one week ago, one of Ukrainian veterans saved a life for a guy in Italy who is bleeding after street fighting because veterans really have this experience. And now I think that it's experience not just for frontline, but for different situation in our life.
It does open up a whole other world, yeah, and those skills definitely are transferable. And that's maybe, a topic for a whole other podcast, for veterans. I want to come back to the small arms training. Kostya, you mentioned doing weapons training. Do you own a weapon? And then building on that, how do you see the role of armed civilians in Ukraine's defense?
Before 2022, I knew almost nothing about firearms. I had a strongly negative attitude towards them, believing that in the 21st century, the world was safe and that I wouldn't never need one. really. I wasn't a hunter, and my only experience was 3 training shot with an Kalashnikov during an university exercise in the early 90s. All that time, the budget only allowed 3 rounds per student, really. But in the spring of 2022, when Kiev was full of sabotage groups, I held a firearm seriously for the first time. I immediately ordered a Ukrainian semi-automatic Zvirkun carabine, the civilian version of the well-known Stribok submachine gun. I carried it with me at all times for several months. It's a very compact and practical weapon for street fighting that fits inside a city backpack and gives you confidence in an unpredictable environment. If you know what I mean, I remember times where Kiev is empty and only some civilians who are responsible for important direction as me, some military, and some really, and around us really a group of guys who try to make a sabotage. And yes, now I think that weapon, it's a part of the life of free people. And yes, I know that I need I have a safe place in my apartment for my carabine. And yes, digitalization connected today with our weapon owners too. If you know our DIA one-stop shop government application with Ukrainian passport, Ukrainian documents, now in this application in smartphone, I have my license for my carabine, and I have possibility to use this electronic license and not use my papers.
No, it sounds like a very important role. And as you mentioned, at those difficult times, I can imagine that, one had to have security and, you had to react in certain conditions to, whatever was happening in Kiev and in the wider Ukraine. And I'm going to tie that now again, or I'm going to circle back to the sequel of the book, because we do want to know a little bit more about it. You've written the book, Management in Times of War. It's had good reviews, as you've mentioned. Can you tell us a little bit more about leadership in times of war?
Okay. Management in Times of War was about the first year of the invasion, about survival, adoption, and rapid decision-making. But the war continues, and now the challenges is not just how to endure, but how to build the future. That's what leadership in times of war is about. This book goes deeper. It explores how to make decisions when exhaustion sets in, when resources aren't just limited, they have already been stretched to the limit. How do you keep people motivated when no one knows when it will end? How do you find new opportunities when it seems like there are none left? And once again, I have included contributors, exceptional leaders from business, the military and volunteer organization who are leading through this condition, and of course veterans, because leadership under fire is a topic rarely covered in business literature. This is not a book about war. It's about leadership that works when everything else is falling apart, because true leadership isn't tested during times of growth. It's tested when moving forward seems impossible.
And going from that, are there any key leadership skills which you mention in your books for situations where there's a lot of ambiguity that you could share with us today?
Leadership certainly it's a really different game. You never have complete information, yet you still have to make decisions. The key is learning to act without the illusion of full control, making decisions quickly, providing direction even in chaos, and most importantly, building trust in your society, with your partners, with your stakeholders. Because when there is no clear map, the team follows the leader, not the plan. This is only part, but I think it's important.
No, that is a big part of it, and I think it does resonate with me. I think it's always easy, like you were saying, to make a decision when you have the full information, and that's often after the fact. Like years later, you look back and one could have done this or could have done that, but in the moment, I think you're right. It's making that decision, and in my very limited view, sometimes that decision and the choices we make there is the best out of not so good alternatives. That one has to choose just the one that's the least worst rather than the perfect one. And that's a difficult thing for people to understand. And I think that's where you mentioned that trust comes in very strongly.
Yes, and this is really not about team building inside your company, inside your department, inside your ministry. It's a harder question because you have a lot of different stakeholders here. Embassies of our partners, our international partners, people inside Ukraine who connected with your project but not responsible for it. It's really huge efforts of different people, and I think that when we work together more coordinated, more efficient, I think it's a big potential for all of us.
Yeah, that makes sense. And for me, I think a lot of what you've said there, working with stakeholders where you don't have the direct command or you can't give the order, go into that. A lot of it is about the trust you've mentioned, a common goal, and some sort of influence, right, with these personal relationships.
Oh, yes, I agree with you. You are right. But sometimes you need to make decision very fast, and sometimes you don't ask another people what you need to do. And as a leader, you take all risk and make your decision and make an action. But I think that this is not about regular work. It's not about regular situation. And in normal life, democracy and flat regime with your team around your important project, it's a more efficient and more sustainable approach in general.
Mm-hmm. No, I take that point. If it becomes a consensus building, asking everyone for permission, there'll be no agility, there'll be no rapid decision making. So that makes sense. And I think you've given our listeners a flavor of some of the good content in management in times of war, what to look forward in leadership in times of war. And lastly, Kostya, do you want to tell our listeners where they can follow you and find out more about your books and your work?
I think the easiest way is to follow me in LinkedIn, where I regularly share ideas, research, updates on my books. And additionally, there are author pages on Amazon and Goodreads. Subscribing there gives you exclusive content and early updates of new books and new content. If you read in English, that's the best way to stay informed about upcoming releases.
That's perfect. And we will also be sure to add some of your details, your social media handles.
Yes, and I'm happy to be connected with Underground Strategy in this network in X and in Instagram. Even in Instagram, I know then we can find Underground Strategy in Instagram. And I think it's important to follow not just me, but you, Tony, and Max Walker in Amazon as authors, because you have not only one interesting book, and number 788 by Max Walker, it's really great new book, and your book about South Africa, about First World War, big war. I think it's a really great books and great source of wisdom and military history. Then I think that it's more important to follow you than follow me.
That's very kind of you. But we will definitely be putting all your links in the show notes. And all I can say again from us at Underground Strategy and me personally, a big thank you, Kostya. It's always a pleasure to have you with us. And we look forward to speaking soon. And good luck with the sequel.
Thank you for the conversation. And remember, what matters is certainly isn't what's ahead, but who's beside you. Take care and see you next time, my dear friend.
Thank you.